What's going on? Matt Moore here, bringing you an interview with my friend Noah Watry. He wrote a book called The Game of Life in Poker, The Lessons I Learned on and off the felt. I wrote the foreword for it. Thank you for reaching out to me. It was an honor to write. That you were a big part of my life during a lot of that too as well, so happy to touch on that. Do you want to let me know what you thought for the foreword, and then we'll go back and forth from there?
Sure. Good start to that. I just want to say that it was important for you to write the foreword to my book just because you're in it so much. And that's why I also think it's kind of neat for us to be able to do this today and record and kind of bounce each other's ideas out, give a little review about each chapter and just kind of talk about a little behind the scenes stuff, so to speak, and how I came to each chapter and what exactly happens throughout the book.
Sure.
So, as far as the forward's concerned, so Matt wrote the forward to the book. He kind of sets up what to expect throughout the book. And for those who are wondering, it's not only about poker; it is also about my life and during those times growing up, from about early 20s, right in that range, I would say. Um, but one of the things he touches on in the forward is that he compares our lifestyles and how we lived to our poker playing. Now he mentions that he was more of the conservative type, the slower player, and then I was more of the swingy player, the aggressive type, the all or nothing. And it's funny how it totally just reflected the way I lived life. And you'll find out with a few stories ahead, but I thought that was a really good point. And when you wrote that, I was like, that's he kind of nailed it.
Thanks. No, it was, yeah, it was interesting. It was almost that epiphany as I was going through writing that too. Just so you know what, because like yeah, that I would lean a little bit more towards selective aggression, kind of pick my moments, and I
Yeah.
needed to feel a lot more confident in my hand before I made moves. Where you were a lot better at trusting your gut and those instincts, and I think that's where you've really sharpened them and gotten to be the player that you are today. Where you are never afraid to bluff, pull the trigger, fire off that second barrel, things that'll make sense as people understand a little bit more if you're already familiar with poker, like being able to bluff on more than one street as it's being turned and so on. And I think that's awesome. You've always had the heart. You've always had the heart, the knowledge, the information, and then the gut, the instinct that way. So, I think you have all three, and that is what makes a great poker player, in my opinion. And and I know that you're rebuilding as we speak. I think that's great, but
Yeah. I couldn't have said it any better myself. One thing I wanted to ask you though, as far as the forward's concerned,
mm-hmm.
was that based on what we just kind of mentioned here, do you have any regrets or would you change anything about that style of play that you had? Do you wish the roles were reversed? Do you wish, say, you were the more aggressive player and the way you kind of lived, or are you satisfied with how things played out in that regard?
I think I do regret not being aggressive enough at times, especially with some of our stories in here about the skybox, some of the underground stuff that we did. I wish I would have been a little bit more aware of my my stack, where I was, how many big blinds I had, when I should have been making moves, bigger moves with suited connectors. I was still playing probably, I call them blackjack hands. I was playing a lot of, like the jack tens. I was comfortable playing that,
Right.
but I wasn't going really lower than that. Like if I had 6 7 suited with a little pressure, I wasn't at that. I wasn't doing that at that time. Like right now, you and I are a little bit more
Yeah.
comfortable to do that. We can.
Oh man, back then that's a raising hand for me.
Yeah, right. And that's you always had that where I'm just now more willing to okay, play that hit and then I can be, and so on too. And I play
Sure.
at micro stakes. I play at the micro stakes. And I love that. I mean, you've played all different stakes. I mean, you've gone really up there and not to jump too far into this book, but no, to answer your question, yeah, I wish I would have played a little bit more aggressive back then and
Hmm.
a little bit more situational awareness. I think that's the biggest part of
Okay.
it. Not just aggression to be aggressive, but situational awareness, I'd say.
Okay. Cool. Um, I think that's about all I really wanted to cover on the forward. I think we should probably just jump into chapter 1 right now. If you're okay with that,
Yeah.
anything else you'd like to say beforehand?
No, I think that's great. And
Okay, cool. Yeah, go ahead.
for chapter one is I'll never get there. And I like that you're painting this picture. I feel like I'm right there with you, especially that the different memories. But it's also educational. So right out the gate for people reading this, if they're not all that familiar with poker, you're still teaching them a little bit. You're explaining tournaments, which I really like, and I like you have playing your best, then the cards play themselves. I think that's a great analogy.
Yeah, I think you touched on it right there perfectly. My notes here mentioned pretty much how I wanted to show people right out of the gate that it's a skilled game, and at some point that skill just takes you so far though. I can't control how the cards come out. I can't control the fate of one card. Well, it ends up being the river card is the final card that's dealt, and
Right.
we'll soon learn that that's a very fateful card over and over and over again in my my poker playing, that you
Yeah.
just take away that final card, and I'm good. I mean,
Right. Right.
but but the skill can take you so far, and you do need a couple lucky hits, a lucky card here or there along the way, but um, that's really just what I want to touch on. And there's a lot of math behind it, so that's why right away I just wanted to show people that skill, knowing your mathematics, and then also kind of building up that suspense for that final card or the final two cards to come, whatever it ends up being.
Yeah.
And that it's a pretty suspenseful thing to play tournament poker and have your tournament life depend on that turn of a card that's out of your control at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's part of the rush of it, right? And it's
Mhm.
fun. And each tournament is different. Each sit and go is different. And that's what keeps me coming back. Anytime I take a long break, I come back, I want to play. You still analyze it. Certain things change as the game grows. But the more things change, the more they stay the same. Those core,
Yes.
the bluffing, the understanding, the reading, people trying to tell a story with their hand, and then making the best of it with reading the way a hand is played. But I think that's great.
Right.
That's really awesome for a first chapter.
Cool. And then one thing I wanted to make sure that I touched on when I opened the book was I already knew the ending. I Before I even started to write, I knew
Mm-hmm.
how I wanted it to end. I
Okay.
knew where I was going with it.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of reverse engineered. Now, how do I get to that point? How can I draw someone in right away and get them to stick around and want to read the next chapter?
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I go about doing things. I always think of what I want to write about and then build up to it though.
Okay. No,
So
yeah, it's great.
so with that being said, other than that, really, I mean, I just kind of talked about how just to try to get people that don't play poker to understand it as sports. Where in sports, there's the playoffs. You're playing for a championship.
Mm.
And in tournament poker, you're going through your regular season. You're starting out the tournament. You're starting the year, and then to get to the playoffs, there's like the final few teams. So in a poker tournament, there's like a final table of players. Usually, it's the final nine, so that you're just trying to go down to be that final winner, be that final Super Bowl champ, NBA champion, whatever sport it is. And that's how I kind of want to relay to people so those that don't play poker could understand what it's like. But
Definitely do a great job with that throughout the book.
cool. I think that's about it for chapter 1. I'm going to try to make these short. Certainly get my thoughts on it, Matthew's thoughts on it, and we'd like to hear your thoughts on it too. So, with that being said, let's close out chapter 1.
All right. Thank you for joining us.